So executive dysfunction, some people are saying literally is ADHD. There's some new research that ADHD is like an executive function disorder in a sense, even though we know that we have advantages, right? Pretty significant advantages. And so some things that are related to executive function are like regulating our emotions, gauging time, how long it's been, whether we can be flexible and adapt to schedule changes or just different situations, which sometimes we can be really good at this stuff, right? So sometimes we can hyper focus and forget what time it is and get a lot of stuff done. Or sometimes we can be very adaptable. So again, ADHD can sometimes be more of a brain of extremes, and it just depends on how it presents for you. But executive function really, it's like a different way of operating system, and I'll talk about the why that is and the science behind it, and then some signs of that. So organization, prioritization as well. If you've ever had 10 tasks you need to get done, and you didn't get any of it done because you felt like it's almost like there's all these tabs open on a computer and it just freezes, right? We can have so many thoughts or tasks and our brain doesn't always prioritize it. Task initiation, like getting started, can be part of that. Working memory, so that could be the working memory is more like short term and remembering multiple things, like, okay, I need to take the trash out and I'm going to empty the dishwasher and I need to make sure I eat. And then it's an hour later and somehow we're mowing the lawn and we realize like we didn't even eat yet, right? So it's like holding the more short term stuff, not necessarily long term. And then self control or impulsivity can fall under that category. It's really like essentially to say like everybody with ADHD has executive dysfunction in a way. Again, though, there's always another side of the coin. So some of these calls, I'm going to be focusing on the things that feel harder because we want to get adaptations in place. And that's not to say there's something wrong with us or there isn't like another good side. Just sometimes coming from a problem solving perspective is helpful. And then sometimes we're going to emphasize some of the other stuff. So that's executive function is that some here are some of examples of executive dysfunction with ADHD. So being very distractible or having trouble focusing on just one thing, unless we hyper focus, right? And we're very interested, or again, focusing too much on just one thing. And these are things that feel impairing. It doesn't mean our hyper focus is something we need to fix. It's when you're hyper focused and you don't want to be. That's when it kind of creeps over into that. Daydreaming or spacing out when you should be paying attention, like during a conversation or a meeting or a class. Trouble planning or carrying out a task because you can't visualize the finished product or goal, or you just don't have motivation, and you can't seem to get started, or it's not interesting. Struggling to go from one task to the other, so task switching. Getting distracted or interrupted like partway through a task. So you start cleaning your office and then halfway through it kind of drops. Impulse control can be part of that as well. Maybe not pausing to think before you talk, and just saying something out loud, or sometimes having trouble articulating something, like you understand it clearly in your head, but you just can't maybe put it into other words, or your brain works too fast. So again, these are not like bad things. It's just a different way of operating, right? And so we can have a brain of extremes. So why is this? And I want to show you another chart. So I want to show you two things. So why they're saying that ADHD really is like a difference in executive dysfunction is because of our brain neurology. So there's 4 different parts of the brain with ADHD that develop a little bit differently. And so we have our limbic system, which is what regulates emotions, right? So if you have emotion regulation challenges, that falls under executive dysfunction. So some people say executive dysfunction and ADHD are almost interchangeable. And so I just want to say that to clarify. It's really fascinating because it's the way our brain is formed. And again, is it a dysfunction if we can do really amazing things and things that other people can't because of how this is wired? So I'll talk to you about that in a second. So the limbic system is regulated a little bit differently, and we can have a deficiency of dopamine, which is also why we could be good under pressure. The frontal lobe, so this is the part that is responsible for planning and organizing and prioritizing and paying attention and making decisions. If you ever get decision paralysis, perceiving time. So that's affected a little bit differently. The reticular activating system. So this is part of, it's a big part of the dopamine pathways with our brain, which, if it can cause more impulsivity and a little bit more hyperactivity. However, right, with those dopamine pathways, which I'll talk about in a second, we can get a flood of dopamine, and that's where we can hyper focus. And other people are like, how do they stay with this? Like, how can they work that long and not even come up for air? Like, I wish I could do that. Because you don't know all the people who don't have ADHD who watch you and want to do things that you're able to do. I noticed that as a coach before I stopped coaching people who didn't have ADHD when I was coaching both. And then the basal ganglia. So this is the neural circuit system. So this regulates communication in the brain, and this can relate to inattentiveness or impulsivity. Okay, so then the other part, right? We talked about the brain, right, and how the brain is developed a little bit differently. Now we want to look at, you may have heard me talk about this before, these neural pathways, because this is what can contribute to executive dysfunction as well. And so I want to pair this with procrastination, because those are two different things. And so a lot of people think they're a master procrastinator. And I want to talk to you why you might not be, and that might not be the word for it. So in a brain, let's say this is a non-ADHD person, right? The way that motivation works, or task initiation, is when there is a task that we know we need to do, whether it's something we want to do or someone else wants us to do, the brain sends a surplus of dopamine to this frontal lobe. Right. This is how motivation works in neuroscience. So it sends a surplus of dopamine to the frontal lobe. And when there's a surplus, and dopamine's the happy chemical, it's the fuel to go, the brain says, hey, we'll give you more. You want more dopamine? Start this task. And so the person starts the task, and the brain says, great. As you keep doing this task, I'm going to give you more and more. And then when you're done, I'm going to give you more at the end. Right. And so it's this fuel that makes you go. So this is a non-ADHD brain. They get the surplus of dopamine, they do the thing, then they get rewarded at the end with dopamine. Okay. An ADHD brain, they've shown, works very differently. So a lot of times there's not a surplus. The brain's like, here's a little bit, but not a surplus. And we may give you some as you go, but we may not. It's kind of finicky. That can happen. So you try to start the task. Like, what's something you can write in the chat? What's something that you don't really like doing? It's not interesting. It's not passionate, but you know you need to do it. What's something that you know you need to do, but
You generate.
okay, lead generate, doctor appointments, laundry, right? These are all great. Okay, so all that stuff. So the brain's like, here's a little. Like, there you go. And this happens. I have executive dysfunction for sure. It's like, here you go, Tyler. Taxes, housework, yep, all that stuff. So the brain's like, here's a little bit. And it's like, whoa. And so we want to do it, but we can't. Like, it feels really, because there's no fuel, right? So sometimes, organizing the office, sometimes we do it anyways, which can be hard, but sometimes we just white knuckle it and we start, and the brain's like, oh, sorry, here you go, here's a surplus, and we're like, okay, thank you, and then we feel better. So if you have you ever had that, where once you start, then you feel better? Once you start lead generating, you have a couple conversations, now you're good. Once you first take that step to organize the office and you move some stuff, now it's like put on music and you're good for hours. So it can be a little finicky. And then sometimes it can drop off halfway through. So if you've ever started a task and you've had motivation, or you're like, I'm gonna clean my whole office out, right? If you've ever had this, or I'm gonna do this project or clean the garage, and you pull it out and you're all excited, and then the dopamine's like gone, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's stuff everywhere. Like, I need to clean, and it's like you're stuck and you can't. So that can be that too, or it doesn't give you any at the end, or if it falls under something that acronym INCUP, right? If it's interesting, new, challenging, urgent, or passion, part of passion. So if it's interesting, new, challenging, urgent, or passion, what can happen is we actually get a surplus constantly. So when we have someone that doesn't have ADHD, they get tired, whereas the brain's like surplus, 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 surplus. So if it's something we're interested in, that's that hyper focus, right? We never get tired of it. And we go, 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 go for hours and hours and hours. And we can get something done in a day that would take someone like a week and a half. That can happen as well. So if have you ever tried to time block or put something in that you're going to do it 15 minutes a day? Has anybody ever tried to do that, like a task you don't want to do, or 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, and then it's too hard, you don't do it? So I know, okay, so some people, so For some, you're doing new task initiation. So some people, if this is really impairing, they will do all of it in one day. So there's not start and stop, start and stop, start and stop, right? They might have 2 days where they do lead gen instead of the initiating it every morning at the same time. So there's not that hump to get over when you get started. So that's an option as well. It's kind of interesting. So again, there's this surplus. So it's kind of a brain of extremes sometimes. So we might just have a little trickle of it and it feels impossible to do that thing, or we might have so much that it doesn't stop. So an example of that might be, if you were a kid, or even now, and whoever you live with, whether it's your parents, your family, a roommate, your spouse, a family member, and they ask you to do something and you feel like, oh my gosh, I have no motivation. I know I should do the thing, but I just can't do this. But then you could go, like play golf, or you could go read a book, or you could go meet friends, and all of a sudden you have all this energy. And on the outside to a partner, it looks like you don't care. It could look like you're selfish, like, oh, so you have all this energy to do this thing that you want to do, but you don't have energy to do this thing that I need you to do. But it's not selfishness. It's like the dopamine. If it's not interesting, new, challenging, or urgent, or passion, there's no fuel to drive the car. It's like, hey, I'm in North Carolina and I need to drive to Florida, but I don't have gas to go. But once I get past South Carolina, then somebody's going to put gas in the car. It's like, okay, well, how do I get to South Carolina? Like there's no fuel, or you just push it down the highway for an hour. So this is why understanding how the chemicals work in our brain is so helpful for like releasing shame. Because it doesn't mean you don't care. It just might mean you need to find a way to get more dopamine, right? As coaching clients say, like, oh, I can't get motivated. And the big breakthrough is we switch that with like, okay, instead of how do you get motivated, it's how do we get dopamine, right? That's why if you think about motivation, sometimes you can get motivated thinking about things that matter to you, or family, or goals, because it produces dopamine, because it makes you emotional, right? That's really what motivation is. It's creating dopamine. And so we can create dopamine by going for a walk, by playing music, by setting a timer, by having like a consequence or a reward, by having somebody sit with us while we do it. Like those are all the things, instead of why am I lazy, right? So I want to go a little bit deeper into the whole thing about procrastination versus executive dysfunction. So is anybody here who would identify themselves as of right now, like you procrastinate, or you fall under that category? Okay, totally. So that's and this is why, okay, so almost all of us, if not every single one of us, and if you were like me, man, that brought a lot of shame for me growing up. And I didn't understand why, and I felt like I was lazy when that's not true. So I want to talk to you about the difference between the two, because my guess, and you could be the anomaly, it's way more towards the executive dysfunction part, but I'm going to let you decide after I talked about this. So procrastination is a behavioral choice to delay tasks, and this is driven by a lack of like motivation or fear, or you might want to be perfect, or you just don't want to do it. And when I say lack of motivation lightly, not the dopamine thing, just like, I'm not inspired, I don't want to do it, right? Whereas executive dysfunction, it's a neurological inability to initiate, plan, or organize tasks, even when you desperately want to. So procrastination is more so like choosing to do something else. And when I say choosing, I don't mean distracting yourself because you're anxious because you can't do the thing and you're trying to regulate. I'm saying you're choosing to do something else. So if you don't want to do the laundry, you go watch TV instead, because that's what you want to do instead. And you don't feel guilty or bad about it. You might be like, I won't have clean clothes tomorrow. I'll do it later. I really want to watch this. Whereas executive dysfunction is more like being mentally stuck or frozen. So mentally stuck or frozen. So if you have executive dysfunction and you need to do the laundry, your internal monologue is not going to be, I'll do it later. It's not that big of a deal. I really want to watch this. This is fun. It's going to be, get up, dude. Why? It's so easy. Put the laundry in. It's not that big of a deal. Just go do it. Why are you sitting on the couch still? What's the consequence? And then you go through this whole thing trying to talk yourself into it. And then you might beat yourself up, and you might do that for an hour or two. And you're watching something on TV, not because it's exciting or you want to, it's like to try and regulate the anxiety because you can't get up and you feel terrible. So you're trying to distract yourself in a way because otherwise you just sit in shame. So procrastination is more of a behavior, whereas executive dysfunction is like a cognitive or neurochemical impairment. So procrastinating is more of like feeling unwilling. Executive dysfunction is you feel willing but incapable. Like you don't understand why you can't do it. You know you need to do it. You want to do it, but you just can't. So when I'm coaching, because I've coached for 8 years now, and then I've coached coaches and I listen to recordings. And one of the biggest mistakes I've seen is coaches, because so many entrepreneurs have ADHD, over 50%, they treat executive dysfunction like procrastination. And it's like so shaming. So if you have executive dysfunction and you can't do the thing, and I treat it like procrastination, which procrastination is I'm going to create some pain for you. If you're just procrastinating and you're not doing the thing you need to do, I'm going to create pain, right? Because you need to get off your butt. And so I'm going to create some pain and some future pain and ask you questions, right? Executive dysfunction, I'm going to help, but I'm going to help you get out of freeze mode. And I'm going to give you tools to bypass the neurochemical stuff. So if you're stuck and you have neurochemical stuff going on and someone layers pain and shame, like, how's it going to hurt your family if you don't do that? But you're frozen, that sucks, right? Like, what is that going to cost you if you don't do that thing? A lot, but you can't do it still, and it feels terrible. So there are coaching clients that have quit coaching because, and I've seen that, and we've saved some because the coach is treating it like procrastination, and really they're just burying the person. So don't do that to yourself either, because we can do that to ourselves as well, right? So procrastination, we're going to create pain. We're going to get somebody off their butt. Executive dysfunction, we're going to give tools. We're going to be curious. We're going to figure out where the resistance is coming from. We're going to create dopamine. We might help regulate the nervous system as well. We might need to bring it down, or we might need to bring it up. And so it's a very different approach. And then we find something that's a lot more sustainable. Right. So you can, with executive dysfunction, you can create dopamine through shame and pain, which is like essentially creating a stress cortisol endorphin response, which is going to create some dopamine, but you're really tasking the adrenals and the stress response, and that's not good for our health. So a lot of times, if you don't have an understanding of executive dysfunction, people just go for the pain. But that's just, I don't want to live every day like stressing myself out and telling myself like I'm lazy to create stress, to create dopamine. So I do the thing. Over time, that's why we can see burnout, right? So we can see a lot of a burnout with that. So I think one of the things, like if you have a lot of executive dysfunction, is first off to identify what are the biggest things that you have that around. What are the things that affect you the most, that you have the most resistance to? And then the first thing we're going to do, like if you're coaching one-on-one, we're going to think, but just be curious, right? What's a resistance to? So for example, let's look at some of these examples you guys gave. So housework. Let's look at housework. Anybody got some housework they could do? They'd feel better if they did it, but it's not done. Oh yeah, right. So you could leverage that out, by the way. You could pay somebody, so you don't have to do it. So if you do have the extra income, we might just leverage that out. Or housework, we might pair it with something dopamine producing, like listening to your favorite podcast while you're doing it. And you only get to listen to your favorite podcast when you clean the house, or we might have some kind of reward. And we might say, okay, I'm going to set a timer, see how much of the kitchen I can clean in 15 minutes. I'm going to go as fast as I can. So what we're doing is we're creating urgency, we're creating dopamine, but it's more of a fun thing versus look at how horrible this kitchen is. Like, is this how you want to live? What's wrong with you? I've done that before. That's not how you want to live, right? So, and some other examples, let's take taxes. I mean, anybody have resistance around taxes sometimes? Oh yeah. So the other thing with executive dysfunction, it could be a lack of dopamine. It could also be because when we look back at the brain and there was trouble organizing and prioritizing, it's like maybe there are 10 steps to do the taxes and the brain sees all 10 at the same time. So it's not saying, okay, breaking it down. Sometimes we need to have, where's my journal, like paper, where you can just write on paper and break down the steps one at a time, because it might be that, like, it's easy. The first step, we don't see the first step. We see the second, the fifth, the 10th, all that. The first step is just to decide if you want to use the same CPA, or to decide if you want to use QuickBooks again or whatever. That's step one, right? But we see all the steps at once, and it's too much instead of one at a time. Our brain doesn't necessarily prioritize it. Or it might be we just email the CPA and say, hey, what do I need to submit for my taxes? But again, we can kind of see the whole, it's like we see the whole big picture instead of the steps. So it feels like this big thing when it's, so figuring out your first step is really, really helpful. I'm going to share something I made, and I think this falls under the, this is a different call I think I did last year, but I'm going to give you this because I'm just, as we're talking, I think this is going to help a lot. So this is what's called a brain dump. And you can do this for tasks. And this is a template, so you can just make a copy if you want. This is the brain dump list. And this is when I get really stuck on something, and I made this for coaching clients as well. So what you do is like you could do it for all the tasks in your head, or maybe you have taxes. So you just dump all the steps you might, like email CPA, decide to use the same one, find receipts, right? So I might take a task and I'm going to put all of the different things, or I'm just going to put my whole to-do list, right? So order signs, call lender back, clean kitchen. So you could just dump all the stuff that you've been putting off in here, in there. And then what you can do is you can label it a priority level. So what we're doing, and this is an example of what helps executive dysfunction, is we want to externalize this process if our brain's not doing it and putting it on paper, right? So we want to say, okay, do I need to email the CPA like today to get it done? And maybe it's yes, or maybe, I could do it this week. I need my taxes in 3 weeks, so that's okay, right? I'm going to decide if I want to use the same one, tomorrow. I need to find the receipts. I can do that tomorrow as well. I need to order signs today. Like I have no more signs. It's going to take 7 days to get here. I need that. Right. I need to call the lender back today so the deal goes through, clean the kitchen. I'd really like to do that tomorrow. Right. However, you can do all of your tasks on this. You can fill out the whole thing. So then what you can do up here is you can press this arrow and sort like that. So now instead of all of these 10 things, you say, okay, order signs, boom, order signs. And then you don't go to the next one until you've done the first one. Call the lender back. I'm going to call them back right now. Right. So does that make sense? So we're prioritizing our tasks, which our brain, again, is kind of seeing all at once. And that's part of the executive function. You can put the date it's due. You can put the link and then the first step here. So this is kind of what made me think of this. So for example, if the clean the kitchen, right? And that feels overwhelming because we see all the steps. The first thing with clean the kitchen is I need to put dishes in dishwasher. So the brain can actually become paralyzed if you don't know the first step. But once we identify it, once we start putting dishes in the dishwasher, boom, now we're in the hyper focus for 3 hours and the kitchen is clean, right? So I just want to reemphasize how important it is to just, if you're stuck on something, what is the first baby step and how much that can move you forward as well and get you out of the overwhelm. So this is your brain dump sheet. I've done this. I have this for my normal to-do list. It's just simple. I also will do it if I have a project, like when I was renovating a camper, I did it with all the things I had to buy and fix because it was so overwhelming. And then just boom, 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 boom. And then let's say you do it, because you will, you write done. It doesn't have to be caps. It's going to turn green. So you get a little dopamine hit. And when you sort, it goes down to the bottom. So you're going to have your whole wins list down here as well. So there's little hacks. So do you see why, if we treat it like procrastination, we just beat ourselves up, how we're not going to move forward, right? Versus having something like this, it's a total game changer, But yeah, so executive dysfunction, I would say be curious and create dopamine from different ways besides just shaming yourself, and just learn more. When there's resistance to something, what are you resisting? Is it are you scared of not being perfect? Is it being wrong? Do you not know where to start? Are you just in freeze mode? Do you need to regulate? Is it really boring? Like, be curious, because I've said this, if shame and guilt worked, it would have worked by now, right? if that technique worked, it would have worked by now. So if the thing's not done and it didn't work, try something else. Thank you so much for being here. So reach out to me if you want to talk one-on-one, if you want to join our group, if you just have any questions, and otherwise we'll see you next week. So